Coming up on episode 375 of Wheel Bearings, we've got the Honda Civic Hybrid Sport Touring, Hyundai Tucson Hybrid, the Kia Weekender concept, a preview of the new Mercedes-Benz CLA. The Volvo EX30 is arriving this year in America. Mazda is going to build a production version of the iconic SP. Got to take a first look at the Cadillac Vistic. The Cadillac XT4 is dead. Bentley's going to launch their first EV in 2026 and delay the full transition to electric to 2035. We've got some roundup of some of the stuff from SEMA this year. The Mercedes AMG electric SUV will be their first performance SUV coming in a couple of years. And we got a little bit on the A2RL, Abu Dhabi Autonomous Racing League. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 375 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Abrul-Sandwich from Guidehouse Insights.
And I am Roberto Baldwin from SAE International.
And Nicole is with the folks from GMC right now. They're doing a drive program for the Terrain. And she will hopefully be able to join us in progress because they got her tied up doing all kinds of nonsense there.
They're giving her information, secret information. I don't know if it's secret. It's under embargo, I guess.
I think it's probably the same information we got when we did the preview back in July or something, whenever it was, July or August.
But now it's flavored. Now it's pumpkin spice because it's fall.
Yeah.
It's pumpkin spice flavored information.
Just in case you missed it last time around, we're going to give you the exact same information again. But
pumpkin
anyway,
spiced.
Hopefully she will join us in progress while we're doing this. Because Nicole was at SEMA last week for several days. I was there for, about 7 hours, which is I was all I could tolerate of SEMA, as it turns out, because it was my first time there. And once I arrived on site, I realized, this ain't my scene. Seeing all these humongous trucks on ridiculous chrome suspensions with gigantic wheels, and it was funny. I saw one that was it was from a company called Hostile Off-Road Wheels, and they were like, I don't know, 22, 24-inch wheels with like razor thin tires on there, and this thing was all lifted up, and it's like, yeah, you're not going off-road on those wheels, my friend.
It's hostile because the hostile off-road. The off-road is hostile to it. That's what they're saying.
Oh, okay.
Hostile off-road.
Yeah.
Like the world of dirt and rocks are hostile to their wheels because their wheels and their tire combinations are clearly not made for any sort of off-roading.
Yeah, definitely not. But we'll come back to that a little later. What were you doing these last days, Robbie?
I was in Japan. So I was in Suzuka at the Super Formula race. It was their season finale. But I wasn't there for that race. I was there for something else. I was there to watch autonomous vehicles race each other. So Super Formula is it's like F1, but it's only in Japan. It is just like F1, a bunch of people together. I was gonna say a bunch of guys, but they do have female drivers. They drive their cars around the track in all the tracks in Japan, and they have a whole season and racing and points, and yeah, it's pretty cool. They had a Red Bull team and a bunch of other teams, but A2RL or AR2L. Sorry, I should have written this down.
No, it's A2RL.
Thank you. A2RL. It is a whole system. It's part of a company called Aspire. It's not even a company. It's anyway. What they're doing is they're working on making autonomous vehicles, AI powered vehicles race. And what I found very refreshing during the event is that the people who are in charge of all this were very forthcoming that this is hard. And there are things that they know that the car isn't that great at. For example, cornering. Like a human's like just better at cornering than they
race cars don't need to do that, do they?
Yeah. And so it's going to take a little while, or a couple years, and we know that failure is an option, and a lot of the things you sort of don't get out of a lot of Silicon Valley based autonomous racing anything. autonomous anything really, to be honest. When you talk to Silicon Valley and some companies, they're very much like, oh, this is happening in a year, and we're going to be, the certain. For example, Tesla. Next year, we're all going to be driving self-driving cars, and these folks, and they know they are on a very controlled track and a very controlled environment, and even they are like, yeah, this is really hard. It's going to take a little while. We're getting a bunch of teams together, and we know we're not going to be taking over, humans versus humans racing, but we can foresee maybe like a humans versus humans with working with AI cars. And then I brought up the thing, well, like, well, you could have teams, and then there's two cars in the team. One's a human and one's an AI car, and maybe you could use the AI. It changes up sort of the dynamics of that race, because you could use the AI car as your Ricky Bobby's teammate in Talladega Nights, where he slingshots you, and it just sort of helps you along and helps you win the race. And so yeah, yeah. The problem was, the issue is that AI is very hard. Autonomous vehicles are very hard, and on the first day they had two cars. They drove around. They weren't going nearly as fast as the human drivers, and they were very, again, forthcoming about that. Like, we haven't gotten there yet. Hopefully soon. Hopefully in a few months. And then the next day, on Sunday, it was supposed to be a human versus the AI car, and they were doing the practice lap. And the second day was colder than the first day, and the wheels were cold, and the track was cold, and it didn't get around through the practice track before there was some sort of issue with one of the rear tires. They told me that they put out a statement that the tire pressure went down very quickly. And you combine that with the fact that it is cold tires on a cold track, and the cars can't do the swing back and forth like humans.
Oh
Again,
yeah.
they're like, they can't do this. They can't do the swing back and forth, so they can't warm up their tires or warm up their brakes.
Why can't they do that? I mean, that seems like a fairly straightforward maneuver.
It turns out it's tougher than we think. That's the whole thing with autonomous vehicles, is that, and again, why I found this whole thing very refreshing, is that they were like, it's hard. These things are so hard that we take for granted as humans, with drivers, with the context of, like, life and understanding how things work, like just teaching these cars to do these things. So that, with the, yeah, and they only had a certain amount of, so the practice lap didn't even finish. The car slid backwards into a barrier. They had another car ready to go, but they had two other races that day. They only had 15 minutes to do their essentially their demo race, and they couldn't get the other car off the track quick enough. So that was kind of a bummer, but it's also, very much like, this is really, really hard. This is a hard problem to solve, even in a controlled environment. And yeah, yeah, I haven't written up my piece, but when I do, it'll be on Ars Technica. You can check it out. Yeah, it was very interesting. I think I've told everyone this in my life so far, but I don't care about sports in general. I don't care about motorsports. I don't care about football. I don't even care about watching the sports that I like to do, like skateboarding and surfing and snowboarding. I just don't want to watch those things. But I do like being at races because of all the tech and all the tracks and all the people and the excitement and stuff. So, and that hand, it was pretty cool. So yeah, A2RL. They'll probably have some more, hopefully some more races in the future where there isn't a drop in temperature from day one to day two. And I felt really bad for the team, because they'd been there for like a month and a half getting these vehicles ready for this race. And then just to have, like, some little weird thing. And the day before, they were having one of two final races for Super Formula, and two teams didn't firmly secure the tires to their vehicles. So two cars came out of the pits with one of their tires flying off.
Oh.
So yeah, and then two, there's wrecks, and so that's just racing in general. Like, things happen in racing.
Hmm.
And this is just one of the things that happens. If you watch Drive, if you're not a big F1 or race fan, if you watch Drive to Survive, this thing just sort of happens. So on one hand, it sucks because I went all the way to Japan to watch this this one race. On the other hand, that's racing, man.
That's the way it goes.
That's racing.
So there's a similar competition called the India Autonomous Challenge, which uses a similar car. I mean, the A2RL uses the a Dallara SF23 chassis, which is the current Super Formula chassis, and Indy Autonomous Challenge uses the Dallara built Indy Lights car, Indy NXT car, which is pretty similar to the Super Formula chassis. Um, for Indy Autonomous Challenge, the cars are all the same. They have the same hardware suite, the same soft sensor suite and compute and software, and the different teams just focus on doing the software, building the software for to control the vehicles. Is it the same thing with the A2RL? Is it?
Yeah, yeah. So IIT, I believe is the name of the company. They do the hardware stack and the base layer software stack.
Mhm.
So it's they here's the car, here's the hardware, here's the software. Now build upon this. Build your AI, your software in order to race your cars. So you can't just like get the car and just throw it on a track. Like you have to build something on top of that. You have to build your secret AI sauce in order to make the car do the thing you want it to do. So yeah, I think it's and I think it would it makes sense because it sort of lowers the entry the barrier for entry for some of these teams. And a lot of these folks are from the world of racing, so they're already very competitive. So and that's a thing you want this sort of competitiveness to sort of push each other. But talking to some one of the teams is they also work together. It's very collaborative because it's so new. And that whole like a rising water raises all ships, or however, I don't know how that goes, but rising tide raises all
Right,
ships,
right, yeah.
something like
Rising tide lifts all boats, or something to
it's
that
all
effect.
boats. There you go. So if everyone is, they want to win, but they're also working together to make this a reality. But yeah, they have a hardware stack. They have an Nvidia chip in there. I forget which one, like the second highest Nvidia chip. They
Probably
have
the Orin.
they have a bunch of sensors. They have three solid state lidars. They have cameras everywhere. They have this really interesting VR system, so people could like be in the car, like you could wear a VR headset like during the race and be in the car and watch the race and sort of turn your head left and right and look around. Which is, if you're a big fan of VR and you're a big fan of racing, that's actually kind of cool. And so they're and the byproduct of this, that they're saying is, they don't see, they're really not talking about, oh, because of this you can have a robo taxi. It was more like, because of this we might be able to because whenever something goes wrong and the AI knows it's going wrong, or AI learns that this is going wrong, maybe it could be like automatic braking. Like in addition to automatic braking, this other thing from AI can be implemented in cars as a safety feature, versus like, oh, these, again, these are not like robo taxi. So this is more like the adding additional safety to passenger vehicles, which again, very refreshing, because everyone's like robo taxis, and I'm like, that's not really something that'll make money for a good 10 years. But sure, it's not going to make money, and it's really really hard. And I think we've talked that to death. But yeah, no, I'm always very happy when I show up to an event and the people have sort of realistic expectations. I mean, they're driving towards something that they want, but they have realistic expectations, and they share them with journalists, versus sort of hiding things and trying to paint like this incredibly rosy picture that doesn't jive with reality. And you can do that because there's a lot of journalists who don't understand how autonomous vehicles work, and don't understand that there's a bunch of limitations, and you can just bring those people in and just say things to them, and they're like, oh, okay, cool, because that's not their main beat. um, and then I show up to those things, and they don't invite me again. But these folks are very they're very yeah. So no, it was a really cool thing. So yeah, A2RL, give it a look, give it a see. Again, they're not trying to replace traditional human versus human racing, which I think is, I don't think any of this is. I mean, if you just want automated cars racing, just open the Gran Turismo app and just send a bunch of
Yeah,
make a bunch of cars and let them race and just watch that.
yeah. I'm a I enjoy motorsports. I like auto racing, and I appreciate stuff like this in the Indy Autonomous Challenge. For the challenge it gives to student teams, to learn and to research different ideas for automated driving control. But as a form of motorsports, I have no interest in watching computer controlled cars race against each other. That's
It's a real, I think it's a real hard sell, and I think they sort
yeah.
of they realize that. Um, I think it was interesting, the idea of having one automated car and one human car on a team.
Hmm.
So you're using that car as a sort of tool within your, your toolbox for the race. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's probably pretty far off for right now.
Yeah.
Um, but it's every even if it's just like a what is it, an exposition, like the Harlem Globetrotters of racing.
Yeah. Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course, the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi Fi in any public places with shared Wi Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state of the art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. We've updated the Wheel Bearings merch store, and now there's a whole bunch of new choices, new colors, new styles, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, hats, mugs, travel mugs, stickers, aprons, tote bags, you name it. You can get your Wheel Bearings merch at shop.wheelbearings.media. Go check it out. That's shop.wheelbearings.media. All right. Well, I actually didn't have any autonomous cars this past week. I had a couple of vehicles that I actually drove. That I turned the steering wheel with my hands and pressed the pedal, and even had to press the stop start button.
Blasphemy.
To I know it was funny. This morning, I got a call from a reporter at the Detroit News, who she calls me on a fairly regular basis for stories she's working on. This time, she wasn't working on a story. It was, she had gotten a Lucid Air to test drive for a few days, and she was just trying to figure out some things like, how do I lock the doors on this thing when I park it? How do I turn it off? Things like that. So, and she knew I had driven one before, and so I talked her through some of those things. So just because you make something simpler doesn't necessarily actually make it easier unless you show people how to use that technically simpler thing.
Yeah,
So
especially because we have decades upon decades upon decades of learned behavior, and
mhm.
then when you get out of a car and it automatically turns itself on and on, often on and on, it turns itself off and on. That can be really like sort of, you're like, what? Where's the button? You're just sitting in the car for 5 minutes looking for the stinking button to turn off this vehicle.
Yeah. Um, anyway, What I did drive first while I was here was at home in Michigan was the Honda Civic Hybrid Sport Touring. So for 2025, the former Honda Insight, which was a slightly restyled version of the previous generation Civic with a hybrid powertrain, is gone. So after 3 tries, they've struck out with the Insight name, and they've given up, and they've gone back to just putting the hybrid just into a Civic, and you can get it in either the Civic sedan or the Civic hatchback, which is it's nice that they give customers that choice, because a lot of people actually like having the hatchback, for the utility that it offers, for putting big stuff in the car, as opposed to just the tiny little trunk opening that you have. Even though the Civic's got a decent sized trunk, but like most modern sedans that have a fastback kind of profile, the trunk opening is usually kind of small. So the hatchback is nice. I did not have the hatchback; I just had the sedan. And the new Civic Hybrid, they've done several iterations of hybrid Civics in the past. The first couple of generations used their former IMA intelligent motor assist system, which was basically a mild hybrid system. I think it was like a 15 kilowatt electric motor and a pretty small battery. This time around, it's got the same hybrid drivetrain that is in the CRV and the Accord. So it's a 2 liter 4 cylinder engine with a hybrid drive, and I think it's 201 horsepower altogether. So it's actually apart apart from the Type R. This is the next most powerful version of the Civic. It's actually got same, I think 1 or 2 horsepower more than the Civic Si, and I found it a lot of fun to drive. I mean, I like the Civic. I like driving Civics. I think it's a really nice size car. That's why we own one. We have the previous generation, but you know this one, with that hybrid system in there. The hybrid system is really pretty seamless in the way it operates. It is a, a two motor blend, ECVT type of hybrid, similar to Ford and Toyota hybrid systems. Although it has some differences in the specifics of how it's architected, but basically, it's a continuously variable transmission system in there with the hybrid. Um, but unlike the Toyota hybrids, which, when you get into a Prius or a Corolla or a Camry, and you go to accelerate, it'll rev up to about 4,000 RPM, and the engine, kind of sits there while the vehicle accelerates up, and it's constantly adjusting the ratio. And the Toyota 4 cylinders, not the greatest sounding engines in the world. They're fine. They're adequately, you know
Built.
powerful, but they don't sound that great. Um, the Civic actually sounded pretty decent. It was actually a lot of fun to drive, and the Civic, for what is technically a compact, although by you know what we call compacts today are, you know, almost as big as what full size cars were 25 years ago. So it is a very roomy car. But I'm averaged 47 miles per gallon with the Civic Hybrid, which is a little bit less than the EPA fuel economy label, which let's see, I think that was um, the official rating is 49 combined, 50 city, 47 highway. I averaged about 47, which, I think I've said this before. The way miles per gallon works with fuel consumption, every additional miles per gallon you get, say you have less reduction in fuel consumption, because it's an inverse curve. And so once you get past about 40 miles per gallon, the extra fuel savings from each additional mile per gallon are pretty small. So a Prius, I think the most efficient version of the Prius is rated at about 57 miles per gallon. Um, this is a lot roomier than a Prius, and the difference between 49 and or even 47 and 57, not that huge in terms of how much fuel you're actually going to save and how much money you're going to save. And the way this system drives is a lot more pleasant than a typical Toyota hybrid system. And compared to, I mean, really the competitor for this from Toyota is not the Prius. It's actually the Corolla hybrid, because they're about the same size. Those two, the Corolla and the Civic, and I think that they get pretty. The Corolla still has an EPA fuel economy rating that is a little bit higher than the Civic. Let me find it. I think it's like 52 or 53. But again,
A
the difference.
scooch more. That
Yeah,
doesn't really matter.
exactly. Actually, no, it's not. It's only rated at 47 combined. The Corolla
Oh
hybrid.
no!
Yeah,
Honda wins again.
yeah. So the real world fuel economy I got with the Civic is the same as the EPA rated fuel economy for the Corolla. So I think if you're considering one of these, a car, sedan in this class, I would definitely go with the Civic. And because you have the option of the hatchback, I would absolutely opt for the Civic hatchback over the Civic sedan,
Yeah.
and then the Corolla behind those. Um, the styling of this generation of Civic, they did give it a mild refresh for 2025, and so they tweaked the front fascia a little bit. Looks a little bit better. I mean, it's not a whole lot different. The rest of the body is still the same, and compared to the previous gen, the 10th generation Civic, which we own, I think the design is a little more subdued. Some might say slightly more boring than the previous generation Civic. I personally prefer the 10th gen, but it's not a bad looking car. It's just not as interesting to look at as the last
Yeah.
generation.
The last generation was pretty cool. I like that last generation.
Yeah. So the one that I had was the sport touring trim. So they have it in just a hybrid Civic hybrid sport or sport touring. So this is the top trim level, and all in, the one that I drove came to $32,845. You want to take a guess at the delivery charge?
Ooh, 1200.
Very, very close. 1095.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it's $100 off. That's pretty good.
eh, yeah. The one thing I would strongly recommend against, if you are considering buying one of these, is please do not buy it in the color that I had, which was let's see, uh, what do they call
Is it
this?
sadness gray or something?
It's urban gray pearl,
What?
which is really the most boring color imaginable. It's
Urban gray. Oh wow, it's just
it is like
gray.
as gray can be.
It's like
And
a Smith song,
yeah,
gray.
and they say it's pearl, but I don't know, you'd have to look at it really closely to see any pearlescent effect in there. It's just it's just gray.
Because they have
Um,
a silver metallic.
yeah,
Yeah, then
just get the
there's like,
Rally Red or the Blue Lagoon Pearl. You know, they're those are the blue is only $455
ooh,
extra. The Rally Red is actually no extra charge for that. The 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 Urban Gray Pearl is actually a $455 upcharge
why would
because
you do that?
I save
This
the
blue is
450 save the 455 bucks, get the red, enjoy the way it looks, and splurge on a few extra accessories.
the white for our car was an accessory. They
Was it
it was
really
a
an upcharge?
yes. But they had that. Those are the ones they had for the lease though, because
No.
they had them on the lot, and everyone's like, "Ooh, look at these other colors we can get." They're like, "Ah, damn it!"
We ordered all these white ones and now we can't give them away.
Then they gave it to me.
But the yeah, and I really like I really like the Civic Hybrid. Also, for 25 model year 25, the Civic got the new infotainment system. It's an Android Automotive infotainment system. It's got Google services built in, so you got Google Maps and Assistant and the Play Store. It does still have support for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, both wireless. There's a wireless charging pad, so that's very handy. The For this year, all or actually since they launched the 11th generation a couple of years ago, all of the Honda sensing package is standard on all trim levels. So you get adaptive cruise control and blind spot monitoring and lane keep assist and all that stuff is included in the price. So yeah, I absolutely recommend the Civic Hybrid as a car that is a very reasonable size, can very easily carry four adults in comfort. It's got decent cargo space, especially if you get the hatchback, and it's ridiculously fuel efficient. 47, 49 miles per gallon. You can't go wrong with this thing.
Yeah. It's
You know,
the Corolla is what 20 starts at 23,625, and then the Civic sedan hybrid. Oh wait, never mind. Forget what I said. Ignore me.
I think the Corolla hybrid is pretty close to the same price
Yeah.
as this one. The 23, I think, is for the straight gas model. Let me see here.
Oh, because it says hybrid, but
Is it?
who knows?
Oh, okay.
Let's see. What happens if I hit build? Dun dun dun. We're doing hybrid. Oh, they're all hybrids. So yeah, 23,625 for the hybrid.
Corolla for no.
2025. Oh,
Oh,
well,
okay. Oh,
the ones I'm looking at are all
oh,
hybrid.
yeah. Okay. Corolla
You can get
hybrid.
a
Yeah, you're right.
regular.
It
You can
starts at
get a regular.
23.
Yeah, so it's cheaper, but
Yeah. So yeah, I
yeah,
mean, you can. Well, that's for the hybrid. That's the LE.
yeah.
And I'm not sure. I think there's a bunch of stuff that they don't include on that one. It's got 16-inch
Yeah.
steel wheels. Um, there's some features that they don't have on the LE.
Do some
Um,
cross shop,
yeah, but
and also the Corolla
either one's a really good car.
hatchback is better.
But the Civic Hybrid's a lot more fun to drive.
Yeah. And you can get the Corolla. You get the Corolla, the GR Corolla, and then you get the,
There
the two car garage. Your GR Corolla and your
you go.
Civic hatchback hybrid.
Perfect combination.
Done.
All right. The other car that I drove, my wife and I went out to Denver for a long weekend to visit our older daughter, and so while I was there, I had a 2025 Hyundai Tucson Hybrid Limited to drive, all wheel drive, which turned out to be fortunate because we flew out on Friday morning, and starting Thursday afternoon, they had their first winter storm of the year in Denver, and got like 7 inches of snow.
Oh
Uh,
no.
yeah, but it was more that it was like because the temperature was right around freezing, just below freezing, so it was very sloppy snow, heavy wet snow. Um, and by Saturday, the temperature was back up to about 50 degrees or mid 40s on Saturday and 53 or something on Sunday. So basically, by Sunday, pretty much all the snow was gone. But driving from the airport to our daughter's place and the Airbnb we were staying at, um, visibility, it was still snowing. The roads were just kind of wet and sloppy, but visibility was more the problem than the road conditions because it was, like I said, right around freezing, and they had already salted the roads, so
Yeah.
driving wasn't too bad. Um, but the Tucson, I drove it this summer for the media launch program they did in California, and was quite impressed with it there. Had several days to spend with it this time around. Took the opportunity while I was out there on Saturday, drove up to Boulder, had lunch with Roman Micah, which was fun, and saw the new car that Roman just bought last week. Uh,
Oh, what did Roman get?
he bought a 2016 AMG Mercedes AMG G63. So he bought
Oh,
an AMG
nice.
G wagon.
Man, okay. This is like the one thing I've driven a lot of cars, like a lot of cars, supercars. I've never driven a G wagon.
Really? Never?
And every time I tell Mike Minnelli over it, he's like the main PR dudes over at Mercedes. He's like, dude, we gotta get you behind the wheel of a G wagon, and it just never happens. It's just I never follow up. It's on me. I could very easily just say, hey, could you send me up a G wagon to Northern California, and they probably would, and I just haven't. I just the time and like I have to drive a bunch of cars for my job and a bunch of cars for the World Car of the Year jury, and the G wagon's not on the jury thing. But so I'm just like, "Mm,
Well,
yeah.
funny enough, the only time I've ever actually driven a G wagon was way back in like 1991 when I
Wow.
was still working, and this was I don't know if it was a first or second generation G wagon. It was when I was still working at GM at the Milford Proving Grounds, and there was one that was in the benchmark fleet, and so I grabbed the keys one day and just
What is
dro-
GM benching marking against the G wagon?
I mean they had
I
almost
know you
everything.
have everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to have everything so you can at least get a but
So
still.
I grabbed the keys one afternoon for about an hour and just drove that around on the off-road track, and had some fun with that.
That's a proper way because no one takes it off road because the G
Well,
wagon.
and especially this one that Roman just bought, an AMG G63.
Oh my gosh, that thing's
It's got
never.
low profile tires, and it rides pretty low. So they're going to be doing a bunch of stuff to it. First of all, it's got a matte black finish on it, so they're going to wrap it to protect the finish, and then they're going to put a lift kit on it and put different wheels and tires on it and take it off roading. But they even stock the way they bought it, it's got like 80 some thousand miles on it. They took it out to their ranch and took it on their off-road course that they have at the ranch,
Yeah.
just on some of the basic stuff. So that was actually probably the first time it had ever it had ever gone off
Wow.
road. And the video's up. I'll put the video in the show notes so you can see the video they did with it.
That's
But
amazing. I need to get out there and visit them because I've been talking about it to work with them on an SAE video because I think it'd be really fun with
oh
them.
yeah, that would be
But
cool.
yeah, I gotta again like the G wagon issue. I have to get my act together. Is what it comes down. As an adult, I'm failing.
Anyway, I saw the G Wagon in the TFL garage. Did not drive that. Roman and I went out in the Defender to go grab some lunch, but I did. I did spend time driving around in the Tucson, and this is the third model year of the current generation Tucson. So Hyundai, for most, for their mainstream models, they do a full redesign every 4 years, and then at the 2 year mark, they do, usually a pretty substantial refresh. Usually at 2 or 3 years in to the model cycle, and so this was the year that they did the Tucson and the Santa Cruz, and they both got updated front fascias that are a little more, slightly more aggressive looking, especially on the Santa Cruz, but even on the Tucson. So it's a little more off roady looking, a little more SUV like. But the rest of the sheet metal is basically unchanged. But really, the most important change that they did was the interior, the dashboard. So the dashboard on the Tucson and the Santa Cruz is all new this year. And if you recall, when it came out a couple of years ago, the current generation came out. The center stack was basically this this one continuous sweep of piano black plastic that wrapped up and over the top of the dashboard and had the touch screen embedded in the top part of it, but all of the other controls on there were also touch sensitive controls. So they didn't have any manual controls on it. And frankly, I don't think anybody actually liked that. It was a
No,
pain to use. It was not good. And Hyundai listens, and they completely threw that out and tossed that whole thing out. Did a new curved display that on top of the dash that incorporates a 12-inch instrument cluster display and a 12-inch infotainment touchscreen. And below that, there's a bank of knobs and buttons for climate control and radio or audio controls and things like that. So you got physical controls again. There's still a few. There's still
yeah.
a smaller touch panel to get things like to turn on the rear window defogger and the front defogger and things like that. But most of the stuff you have physical controls again. worked really well. Really impressed with it. I liked driving it a lot. Um, the hybrid powertrain, um, is basically the same one that Hyundai and Kia use in a bunch of different vehicles. So it's a 1.6 liter 4-cylinder turbo with their uh, with the 6-speed automatic transmission, and then there's an electric motor sandwiched in between the engine and transmission. Uh, and Let me find it here. The Let's see. No. Uh, oh, here we go. So the combined total output is 231 horsepower for with the engine and the electric motor, 271 pounds-feet of torque, which is pretty good. The gas versions of the Suit Tucson this year is a 2.5 liter. There's a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, naturally aspirated, 187 horsepower, 178 foot-pounds of torque. So significantly better performance from the hybrid. Like I said, the engine is about 178 horsepower, 195 foot-pounds of torque. There's a 64 horsepower electric motor. So even though the battery is fairly small, you can easily drive short distances. Just on electric power if the battery's charged up, um, and 1.5 kilowatt hour electric or battery, lithium ion battery. Lots of cargo space in the back. This current generation of Tucson grew quite a bit compared to the previous one, so it's I would say closer to a mid-size than a compact at this point,
Yeah.
as is so often the case. But lots of cargo space. You know, you had two roller bags, for my wife and myself, and two backpacks in there. You could easily put four. Actually, you could probably put, I think, six roller bags in the back of this thing, four standing on their ends side by side, and then two more kind of turned 90 degrees from that on the end. There's enough room there in the rear hatch, so lots of space back there. Lots of room in the back seat for a couple of adults. My daughter's boyfriend is probably about 6'2". He had plenty of room back there, and
I
so
mean, he wasn't going to complain.
well, that's true.
You just throw him in the back of the Miata. He's like, I'm cool. It's good. It's good. It's cool. Whatever you
uh,
say, sir. Whatever you say.
but he definitely had plenty of room back there. It's very this thing is surprisingly spacious, and one of the features you get on the hybrid is there is paddle on the left hand side, or paddles behind the steering wheel that allow you to adjust the amount of regen you get. So it doesn't. It's one stop short of what you get with the Hyundai EVs. So it won't do full, to a stop regenerative braking, one pedal driving. But you get pretty close. You can go, from 0 to 3, and at level 3 you get pretty decently strong regen with this thing. So if you like having a lot of regen, even with a hybrid, Hyundai's got you covered there.
True.
um, so yeah, I like the Tucson quite a bit. The Let's see, let me find here the official EPA rating, um, is for the hybrid limited is 35, 35, and 35 miles per gallon. So 35 miles per gallon across the board. Um, the temperature, for the most part, was on the colder side while we were in Denver. It did get warmer towards the end, but the average that I got was about 30 miles per gallon, so a little bit below the EPA numbers, but still very impressive. For a vehicle this size, not as good as what I've seen in terms of fuel economy compared to, say, a RAV4 hybrid or CRV or Escape hybrid, which are closer to upper 30s to 40 miles per gallon. But I think in warmer conditions, you could probably get closer to certainly closer to the 35 mile per gallon EPA numbers for this thing.
Yeah. That's a reminder that like cold weather affects gas and electric motors.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So people are
And
like, "Oh no, it's the gas." I'm like, "No, man, you're using more gas when you're driving in the cold too."
yeah, and when the roads are all snowy and slushy,
Oh,
you're
that's
that also has a big impact on
yep.
your fuel consumption because it's a lot more rolling resistance to get through. So it does have an impact there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just resurfaced my video about cold and EVs. Just precondition your EV, especially if you can plug into your house, before you leave. Just climate control. Have the climate control ready. That's gonna get the battery nice and warm from the grid versus driving, and also precondition before you go to a charging place, so your car more likely charge quicker.
Yeah. Speaking of charging, one other thing I noticed, especially in Denver, is throughout the whole area of Denver where we were staying, mostly residential areas, and a lot of older homes, a lot of single family homes that were sitting like what right next to each other, and there was like nobody had a driveway, nobody had a garage, everybody had to park on the street, and there's still quite a few EVs in the Denver area because Colorado is a ZEV state. They've got a $5,000 state tax credit on EVs in addition to
Ooh,
the $7,500 federal tax credit. So you saw a lot of EVs driving around, but you know what we've talked about before. We need more curbside charging infrastructure
curbside charging.
to enable people that live, in that kind of situation. And it's not uncommon in a lot of older cities, to have neighborhoods where, houses are right side by side by side. Even my daughter, she lives in an apartment, and her apartment and most of the other apartments around that I saw don't have any parking lots or parking garage. Everybody had to,
Street
these are not
parking.
high rises. There may be three or four floors, but everybody had to park on the street, and so you need to make charging accessible for those people as well.
Yeah, I think more curbside charging and more AC charging at like retail areas.
Hmm.
Because I think DC charging is great, but you're like, oh, I got to run back out and move my car. But AC charging is something you do. Like DC is active charging.
Yeah.
AC like slow charging is passive charging. That's the charging you do while you're taking care of errands, you're working, you're sleeping, you're watching a movie, you're eating a sandwich. More AC charging. That's my there we go. That's my big takeaway for today.
All right. So last week there was a big event, and well, there was a couple of big events, but we're not going to talk about one of them because it just makes me sad. But the other one was the SEMA show in Las Vegas, which actually, now that I think of it, kind of makes me a little sad too. Um, I was there for about 7 or 8 hours. I was invited out there to do a panel with Dan Neal and Jamie Butters from Automotive News, and why am I blanking on his name from Auto Week? Mark Vaughn from Auto Week. And it was a fun panel. Hopefully, they'll get it up on YouTube one of these days. But they there was some interesting stuff that they showed there, as there usually is. A lot of automakers, usually get some really wild concepts out there. There was all kinds of other crazy stuff too, but definitely want to talk about a couple of the concepts that were there. Starting with Kia. Um, what did you think? There was two Kia concepts, Robbie. Both of
I
them
didn't
electric.
even I didn't even pay attention to the other one. I don't know the name of it. I don't care about it. I'm sure it's cool. It's you know what? It's probably really cool, and I'm just ignoring it because the Adventure EV is awesome. So I at the time it's their PV5. It's their van. It's sort of a mid-sized van,
That's the
electric
Weekender.
vehicle, or the Weekender. That's what it's called. Um, the Weekender for the weekends because weekends are made for fun. Um, yeah, the Weekender is dope. It's like, and there's a ton of like little features this car, they show off in their digital, 3D rendering of, I guess digital isn't, I didn't need that word. they're 3D rendering like a video of this vehicle. Um, but it's the van. It is essentially, and in California and probably in other states as well. The Sprinter has become the sort of a de facto adventure van. Like people buy a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter and they outfit it with everything, for surfing, for camping, for kayaking, for all this stuff. Well, now you can get this smaller. Well, now you can't, but hopefully, fingers crossed. Next time I see Kia, which will be at the LA show, I'm just going to be like, "So when you making this?" There will be this weekender, and it's just cool. I really like vans. I think vans make a lot of sense for a lot of things, and I like this. This is not a huge van, but it's big enough, and it's adventure-y, and it has a pop top, so I could stand in it. And in their little video, it shows people sleeping up on top of it. Um, Man, I just no, it's great. It's wonderful. It's the perfect dog van. It's the perfect band van. If you do arts and stuff, it's a good arts van for moving all your art stuff. If you're working on your house, it's the Home Depot van. It's yeah, no, this thing is awesome. And
Th-
I,
th-
I and I had it while I had the ID Buzz, which I really like. So I had the ID Buzz for a whole week. I was really sad for it to go, and then Kia shows this thing off, and I'm just like, oh man,
this is what people want VW to do with the ID Buzz.
yes.
They want a camper version of the ID Buzz, which doesn't sound like VW actually wants to do that for some reason. I don't know why.
I mean, VW's not doing super great.
Yeah,
I think they understand. I think based on where VW is. I think building that van in one location in Germany for the entire world, 100,000, a year is a smart decision because they don't want to happen to them what happened with the Beetle when that was, the first 2 or 3 years. Tons of people bought the Beetle. Then after that, sales just plummeted because then people are like, the people who wanted it got it, and after that, there was no sort of long tail for that vehicle. Where I think the ID Buzz, there is a potential for a long tail. But for right now, where Volkswagen is as a company, this is sort of a smart move, and let the third parties take care of it
yeah,
because a
and
lot of people customize what they want, and it's just I think they just kind of don't want to get into it when maybe they'll sell 5,000 of those.
and I'm sure that next year at SEMA there will be, at least half a dozen ID Buzz campers,
Oh yeah.
overlanding campers, and this vehicle, the Weekender is based on the PV5 that Kia showed at CES this year, and the one they showed there, was set up, as a, could be used, for all kinds of different commercial van uses. They had it with a wheelchair ramp, and within within the next 12 months, we will probably see um, versions of the PV5 outfitted with automated driving systems, because it is one of the vehicles that Hyundai Motor Group is including as part of their AV Foundry program, where they're going to build AV ready versions of some vehicles to sell to other companies that are developing automated driving systems to deploy them. That's what, for example, Waymo is buying is going to buy Ionic 5s to use for their fleet starting next year. And there's going to be a PV5 version for that application. But this one, with big wheels and off road tires and, lifted and the camper. And one of the other neat features that they have on here, it's got a built in winch on the front. And there's a display, so there's like a dot matrix LCD display that when you're using the winch, for example, it will tell you what the load is on the cable so that you don't overload it. So if the winch is rated for, I'm not sure what it's rated for, but let's say it's rated for 10,000 pounds. If you put more than 10,000 pounds load on the cable, it'll show you as you're approaching that. Um, and there's lots of other neat features about this thing. The front passenger seat is actually turned around and faces backwards, and you've got a little ottoman there, so somebody can sit there and kind of relax, recline back in that thing, and there's a table and chairs in the back. You can camp in this thing. This looks like a lot of fun. I hope they do build something like this.
Yeah, I think, if they build, maybe 15, 20,000 units a year,
Yeah.
maybe more. I mean, I think, essentially, like, if someone said, "Hey, what if we redid the Honda Element, but it was a Kia and it was
Yeah.
electric?" Like all the potential of the Honda Element, but an electric Kia and a van.
So the other vehicle they showed, which sounds like you don't really care much about, is the
Yeah, it's not that I don't care about it. It's just that this one was so much fun
yeah,
that it was hard to. I can't even remember the other one.
it's the EV9 Adventure. So it's basically an off-road version of the EV9. Again,
Whatever.
lifted, big all-terrain tires, recovery points. Yeah, if you want to go, this is Kia's answer to the Rivian R1T or R1S, I should
Yeah,
say.
yeah. Which I'm sure if they brought that to market, it would do really well, um, because it's the EV9. EV9's a great EV. It's off-roady. People love buying off-roady things they'll never actually go off-roady with. Um, no, I'm sure it'll do great. I would like a weekender.
Yeah. All right. There was other stuff at SEMA. Probably the other biggest automaker presence there was Toyota. They had a bunch of stuff. Um, the one of the one two of the more interesting ones. Actually, there's a bunch of interesting ones. They had a GR86. If you're a fan of World Rally Championship, back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, Toyota competed in WRC with the Celica version of the high performance version of the Celica with all wheel drive and a powerful motor and everything. And uh, back in the day, they were sponsored by Castrol, and they built a GR86 with that was basically set up as a rally car and had the same kind of Castrol livery on it, which I thought was kind of fun. Oh yeah, and they replaced the engine in it. Instead of the Subaru Boxer 4-cylinder, it's got the engine from a GR Corolla, the 3-cylinder turbo, 300 horsepower from the GR Corolla.
Oh wow! I'm sure the folks over at Subaru were thrilled to hear about that.
Well, I mean, they could have done their own thing, but they didn't. They chose not to.
They don't have Toyota money,
Yeah,
to be honest. Yeah. I mean, they have some of Toyota's money, but they don't have Toyota money. They're like, oh, that's great.
yeah. Uh, then there was the tailgate, the ultimate tailgate Tundra. Uh, what did you think of this one, Robbie?
I why? Like I don't know. I just here's a bunch of screens. I'm like, what? Like screens, like you can buy a TV for like 150, 200 bucks now. Like a 60-inch or bigger like TV from Best Buy, or I was going to say Circuit City, but that hasn't been a thing for forever. Or Walmart or Amazon or whatever. And they're like, "Hey, look what we did." Or like, I don't know. What why?
This one's got 5 55-inch weatherproof displays.
So
Uh,
okay, so 5 55-inch. So let's say $1,000. Oh, we weatherproofed them. All right, $1,500. I saw it. I was like, oh, so you just put a bunch of screens on a car? All right.
well, clearly you're not so much into tailgating because you don't care about sports. So, and frankly, I don't care either. But
Well, I think you. Let's say I was tailgating and I said, hey, let's all play some Mario Kart.
okay,
So 5 people can play Mario Kart in the tail at the event while waiting for sports to happen.
and if you brought a Lightning or a Silverado EV or even a Cybertruck, you could bring 5 55-inch displays with you. You can buy cheap 55-inch screens for what, 250 $300. You could
It's
bring
not
those
even that.
plug
You can get one for like $150 now.
for a
So cheap.
55.
Yeah, it's
Oh, okay.
ridiculous. They're so cheap. Like, we had to go buy I had to go replace the TV, and it ended up costing it was gonna cost me more to recycle the old TV until I found, like, a recycling place that just took it, than to buy the new TV.
Uh, but if like I said, if you have an electric EV or electric pickup truck, you could just bring some TVs and plug them in and have your Mario Kart party right there. It'd be
That's
great.
true.
All right. What about the uh, what do they call this one? The ooh,
What is it called?
it's something
Surf
surf, Forerunner surf.
surf Sure, why not?
Yeah. Basically, they took a Forerunner, or yeah, Toyota TRD Surf. They took a Forerunner, a brand new Forerunner, and they chopped off the back 2/3 of the roof, uh, and got rid of the rear doors, and put in a roll bar and a couple of surfboards, and made it more like the original first generation Forerunner.
Yeah, it was very weird. They're like, "Hey, remember this cool thing we used to build?"
Yeah,
Remember how cool the Forerunner how much fun the Forerunner used to be? That's what it felt like.
yeah,
I
because
this is pretty dope though.
the original was based on whatever the Toyota pickup of the time was,
Yeah.
and like a lot of SUVs in that period in the 1980s, the rear part of the rear portion of the roof was removable, so you could drive it in the open like this.
Yeah, you could just yank it. I mean, it couldn't. It was a little bit difficult to get it off, but you could.
Yeah,
And yeah, I still see them around like my neighborhood. People who have old Forerunners who have done this, and it's like, man, that's the dream. I mean, no one. This is really cool. No one's gonna buy it because it's not four doors. It's they're gonna buy the old one. But at least Toyota recognizes that people like this. At least the SEMA crowd does.
yeah.
The SEMA crowd in me. That's
Yeah.
it.
The I just checked while you were talking. Best Buy, you can get a TCL 55-inch 4K TV for $219.
See, they're so cheap. I think I bought that TV.
The last TV I bought was like 5 years ago. It was a 55-inch 4K. Was $500. So they've come down a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. Like we bought one like a few years ago, and it was like $500, which was like way cheaper than like the $1,500 we had spent like years before for our
Yeah.
other flat screen that finally died. Like when I had to go get the new one, I was giggling to myself, "Well, this is ridiculous."
I think I might just have to go replace that TV. Need an excuse to
Yes.
replace that TV. Anyway, one last SEMA item. There was a Miata that was out there, a baby blue Miata, which we saw, and a lot of other people saw it, and posted stories about this thing, saying that this thing had a Lamborghini Huracan V10 engine in it, um, and in fact, it had Lamborghini parts, but it did not have a V10 engine. And this thing, and also two turbochargers. If you When we got up and looked closely, because there was a big giant hole in the roof or in the hood, where the Lamborghini intake plenums and the turbocharger plumbing and everything stuck up, and you could look in between there and you could see, that doesn't look much like a Lamborghini V10. It was an old Chevy small block.
It's just an
And
LS swap, but everyone and
yeah,
their dog is done.
yeah. But somebody did take the time to put two turbos on there, and also uh, fabricate some plumbing to go from the Lamborghini intake plenums, which have 5 ports on them for one for each of the 5 cylinders on each bank, to go into the 4 intake ports on the Chevy small block. Uh, so yeah,
That's
but it
that's
was it
that's
was fun
hilarious.
while it lasted.
Uh,
Yeah. All right.
that's a Lamborghini. Hold on.
Also, this week we got some news from Volvo. Um, Earlier this year, they were supposed to launch the Volvo EX30 initially at the end of last year, so almost a year ago. That got delayed initially until the spring of this year. And then in the spring of this year, when it was announced that there would be new 100% tariffs on Chinese built EVs coming into the United States, Volvo decided to postpone the launch of the EX30, which was supposed to be their more affordable EV, until 2025 when they start building them in Belgium instead of in China, where they're currently built. Um, Last week, Volvo announced that they are bringing in a limited number of EX30s before the end of this year and delivering those to customers. In fact, my guess is it's not confirmed, but my guess is that all of those cars are already on the ground in the U.S. and have been for some time, because the tariffs did not actually go into effect until just a few weeks ago.
Hmm.
And so my guess is that Volvo was bringing those cars in and stockpiling them, and now are going to get ready to start shipping those, because then once these run out, then it will be sometime middle of next year before we get more. And the ones that they're selling right now are the 422 horsepower twin motor performance versions, which will have a sticker price of $44,900. Um,
So does the tariff begin count when it's manufactured, or
when
does
it
it
when
count
it's
when
brought
at
into the
point of
country.
point of sale? Oh, when it's brought in the country versus
Yeah,
point of sale.
yeah, because
All right,
tariff is a tax on imports. So
importing. Okay,
so
yeah,
when you bring it in, whoever is bringing it into the country, in this case Volvo Cars USA, pays the tariff on that. And in most cases, when there's a tariff on a product, that gets passed along to the consumer.
yeah. That's
Um,
how it works.
yeah,
That's how tariffs works. That's
yeah.
why
I mean,
things.
unless
That's why. Yeah, that's why a two-door truck. That's why trucks are so chicken tax.
yeah,
Everyone look up chicken tax.
and that's that's why, unless you are a car maker that's really desperate to lose money, you pass along the tariff to the customer.
Yeah.
So in this case, since they're keeping the price, I'm assuming these cars were brought in before the tariff went into effect. So they're going to be delivering these over the next month and a half or so, and then everybody else will have to wait until later in 2025 to get a Belgian-built EX30, including the single motor variant, which will start at somewhere around $37,000.
Cool. Every vehicle will come with French fries and mayonnaise. That's a Belgian thing.
Yeah. Let's see. What was next? Oh, the Mercedes-Benz CLA. Did you see the preview video of this thing?
I did not. I remember seeing the look of it at the look of it, the wrapped like demo or show car at CES last year, and I was like, well, this is the smart thing to do. This is a smart design decision. I think we all know what happened with the EQ and EQS, where the EQ lineup for those, they people just didn't respond to them. They just didn't like them. It's a design thing. It's not that there's anything wrong with the cars. It's just people are cars are an emotional purchase for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really like the look of the CLA, or at least the one they showed off at CES. So now
Yeah, and
they're
it's
showing off a wrapped thingy.
yeah, and it's pretty close to the looks pretty close to the concept that they showed last year at Munich, and then brought to CES in January. Um, so it's their smaller four-door sedan, and up until now we've been under the assumption that it was only going to be available as as an EV, but to no one's real surprise, it turns out there will also be an internal combustion version, with a some sort of electrified internal combustion engine. We don't know details yet on whether they they reference a 48-volt architecture, but it's not clear. There's also going to be a motor built into the transmission, an electrified transmission. So it's not clear if this is going to be like a P4 mild hybrid, a 48-volt mild hybrid, or a high voltage hybrid. But there
Yeah.
will be a version that you can put gas into it and drive it around that way.
I wonder if they do a series with a little generator.
Uh,
Probably not.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't
Not
think they'll
not
do
not
that.
for this one.
No. But
Uh,
I think they're looking at what BMW's been doing, and BMW's been doing really well. BMW is sort of a dark horse in the EV world, because there's so many BMWs that are EVs on the road that people just don't know because they look exactly like the gas vehicles.
yeah.
Like, and I see them like, oh, that's an EV. Oh, that's it. Oh, they're doing pretty well. Good for them.
Yep.
Again, I live in Northern California, where the world is, we're silly with EVs. I see VinFasts all the time. So there you go.
And that's about the only place in America where you will see them on a regular basis.
Yeah. There's also a dealership up the street from my house.
Yeah.
So I am waiting for that VF3.
Yeah.
I like that VF3 comes if they're gonna get my money. Because I feel like people, like, I've seen a couple articles where people have driven it and they're like, this is way better than it was. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel like they're if they're smart, they're just going to keep getting better. They're going to do the Hyundai thing, where the first Hyundais were trash. The
Mm-hmm.
first Hyundais came in America, total trash, but they got better. And now Hyundai's like the automaker, to
Yeah.
be honest. Um, and I think VinFast, if they just keep going at it, and they're really good by the time the VF3 comes out, I'm going to be very happy.
One of the things that they mentioned about the CLA is that it incorporates technology from the EQXX concept from a couple of years back. Did you get to drive the EQXX?
I did get to drive the EQXX. I flew all the way to the south of France. Yeah, yeah, all the way to the south. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, that's where I drove it. Pretty sure that's where I drove it. I drove it on the big testing ground,
Yeah.
which I believe was, or maybe it was just Germany. Doesn't matter. I've been in it a couple times. One of the times I drove it, it's an extremely impressive vehicle. It was a great sort of lab for them, because they did learn a lot of stuff. They're like, well, we don't need as many modules because these batteries aren't dying as quickly as we thought. They're not depreciating, they're not degrading as much as everyone thought they would. So we can have fewer modules, which saves weight, and we can, you know, use wind speed as a
Yeah.
as an indicator, and wind direction as an indicator of how much consumption you're using. And we can use, solar panels in order to run, like, the interior, just your dash, because it's not going to run the car, obviously. It's solar panels, but to run like all these sort of extra little things. And it's a very interesting rolling laboratory, and the team that worked on it were very excited and very proud. They did a lot of really cool range runs with it, where they kept breaking records, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and so, yeah, anything they can bring out of that. And they talked about how they want to, like, take as much as they can out of that vehicle and put it into a production vehicle. So the fact that they're doing it in the CLA, which I think they talked about at CES, um,
Yeah, they have
is
they
good.
have mentioned it before. I wonder if they're
Yeah,
going to use the same type of LFP battery that they used in the concept in the
I don't
EQXX.
know. I mean, just,
I would imagine that at least maybe for a standard range model, they'll probably
yeah,
use LFP and then maybe have a nickel battery, for a longer range version.
yeah, yeah. No, I think
Although
that's
they got a lot of range out of the EQXX.
they did. They got like crazy amounts of range out of the EQXX, and it's when we're talking about energy density and range and efficiencies. For a long time, I think, you had Lucid. Lucid was
Mhm.
the company, and then Hyundai was doing some really interesting things, even for their sort of, their Kona was extremely efficient for a gas car that had an EV powertrain shoved into it. And so I think efficiencies are, we're getting to the point where it's no longer just shove the biggest battery you can in a car and do the range, because they realize that's so incredibly expensive both for them, and then they have to try to sell that to customers. So becoming far more, making vehicles more efficient while also increasing energy density is a great way to sort of really sort of kickstart this, because you're, more efficient, more energy density, cheaper cars.
Yep.
Ta-da! I mean, it's still a Mercedes, so it's
Yeah.
not cheap, but
Relatively speaking.
yeah, relatively a less expensive Mercedes EV that still gets the same amount of range. There
Yeah.
you go.
This is also going to be the first Mercedes with their new central compute platform with an NVIDIA Orin system for the central compute, and their new Mercedes-Benz OS. And versions of this will be available with the NVIDIA automated driving stack, their Hyperion drive stack. That'll be an option on this car, and also an AI-powered MBUX virtual assistant, which is using you know a chat bot developed with NVIDIA as part of this. So lots of NVIDIA content in this car.
Yeah, but I mean, MBUX was the voice system for me worked really well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now they're just branding it AI because everyone else is
Yeah,
branding their stuff AI. That's pretty much
it
it. They're like,
it always had some of that stuff in there.
yeah, it had it in there. Just now, it's it's good. Its
Now they're putting
shareholders
more,
love that
adding more LLM in there. Um,
LLM.
yeah. All right. Let's see. Oh, did you go to the Japan Mobility Show last year, the Tokyo show?
I've never been to the Tokyo
Oh.
show. Thanks for bringing that up. Thanks for bringing up that sadness.
Well, I mean, you were just in Japan a few days ago, so.
That's true. I was just wandering around Osaka on Sunday. It was great.
Um, well, at the Japan Mobility Show in Tokyo last year, just about, in fact, yeah, just over a year ago, because it was the last week of October. One of the stars of the show was the Mazda Iconic SP concept, which at the time Mazda did not give any indication that they were actually going to produce this. But this is an absolutely gorgeous concept. Very much kind of an RX-7 style sports car with a two-rotor Wankel rotary engine and electric drive. And they have apparently acknowledged that yes, they are going to make a production version of this car. The combined output of around 365 horsepower, and this thing is just stunning to look at.
It'll be interesting of where they go with it because you would like Mazda to be like, oh, this is going to be our EV, or this is going to rotary or whatever, a range extender series hybrid, whatever they figure out doing. But you also remember that Mazda doesn't have Toyota money,
Yep.
so they can't just jump, or Honda money, or so they can't just jump into like, okay, we're going to make this a full EV because it's going to be a little tough for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be real interesting to see exactly how they do this, how this is configured. But I'll just be glad if they build anything that looks even remotely like this car, because it was
Oh yeah,
amazing to look at.
yeah, it's beautiful. I wonder how much it'll cost. I wonder if it'll just be like a Halo. This is our $80,000 Halo car. You're like,
Yeah,
oh, okay. Um, or maybe maybe it's it'll be like this in the MX-5. They'll have two fun, uh, generally inexpensive vehicles. $50,000.
yeah,
That would be the sweet spot for this vehicle.
yeah. If they can build it and sell it for 50 grand, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Cadillac, as of today, officially announced or gave it released details on the new Vistic, which they initially showed a couple of pictures of it almost a year ago, and then a few weeks ago we got a backgrounder at a secret undisclosed location, so we got to see it in person, and that news came out today. So the Vistic is their 3-row crossover, electric crossover. So they've got the Escalade IQ at the top end of the lineup, which is based on the Hummer and is ridiculously heavy. And then the Optic at the entry level, which is based on the Equinox EV. And then the Lyric, which was the first one they launched a couple of years ago, which is a 2-row midsize crossover. The Vistic is very much like what they did when they did the XT6 from the XT5. The XT6 has the same wheelbase as the XT5, the gas crossovers, but a taller, longer body, so they could fit in a third row of seats. They did the same thing here with the Vistic. Same wheelbase as the Lyric, same 102 kilowatt hour battery pack, and but a taller, longer body. So it's actually got reasonably comfortable 3 row seating. It's actually, I think it's like 9 inches longer than the Volvo EX90, and slightly bigger than Mercedes EQS or the what was the other one that I was comparing it to? Um, Another 3 row crossover. I can't remember now.
EV9.
EV9, yes.
There you go.
Oh no, actually, I was thinking about a premium brand, not.
Oh,
Let me find it here.
Lincoln.
Oh no, the Model X.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's 4 inches longer than the EQS, 6 inches longer than Model X, and 7 inches longer than a Volvo EX90. And one of the complaints about the EX90 was the third row was really kind of tight. And I sat in the third row of the Vistic, and while it is slightly knees up seating, I had plenty of headroom, plenty of leg room, much more so than in the Volvo and or the EQS. So it's definitely a usable third row. In fact, the Vistic is even slightly longer than the GMC Acadia Denali, which is already a pretty big car. So it's a good sized vehicle, even with the shorter, relatively shorter wheelbase of the. Well, actually, the wheelbase is not that short because it's pretty long in the Lyric. The Lyric has a very long wheelbase.
Yeah.
Um, the other, besides the body, the other big change from the Lyric is the motors. So it's got the same battery as the Lyric, but where the all-wheel drive Lyric is 500 horsepower and 450 pounds-feet of torque, the Vistic gets 615 horsepower and 650 foot-pounds of torque. And so Cadillac is targeting 300 miles of range. The Lyric all-wheel drive is like 324 miles of range. Um, I think I feel like it's going to be tough to get 300 miles out of the Vistic because it's also like 500 pounds heavier than the Lyric. But we'll see. It's definitely a lot lighter than an Escalade. It'll have the same 200 kilowatt charging, um, and the interior, the dashboard is very similar to the Lyric, and the optic, same 33-inch curved display. It does add the lower touchscreen display from the Escalade IQ for the climate control, but it still has manual vent controls. So yay for that.
Yay! So you got that going for you, which is nice.
Yeah.
The hood is so. How long is that? The hood looks really long.
It's
Like the packaging's very weird. It
yeah,
is
it's about
long.
the same as it is on the Lyric.
All right.
And the Lyric, granted, has a what looks like a fairly long hood. Its proportions, it's got that sort of long hood proportions on it,
Mhm.
but and it doesn't have any frunk, which is still kind of strange, but whatever. Um,
Such a
I know
long
you. I
hood.
mean, I've lifted up if you open up the hood on the Lyric, and then lift up the plastic cover, especially on the rear wheel drive versions,
Mhm.
there's a lot of space there that's not being used. That
Just
could,
air.
yes, that in the all wheel drive, some of that space is taken up by the front motor, but even that isn't that huge. So you could do a smaller frunk and still have something there. And the fact that they don't, has always struck me as a little odd. But what are you going to do?
Even my weird Ionic 5 has a tiny little frunk. Like I could put
Yeah,
like a cable in there and a laptop and a few other things maybe, but nothing like big.
yeah,
But it's like, but you look in there, like there's some room. All right, fine. But I've never opened it. I've like opened it to look in there. I'm like, all right.
yeah.
haven't put anything in there because it's just easier. Just like the trunk opens up, you put the stuff in.
Um, so the Vistic goes on sale next spring as a 2026 model, and comes standard with all-wheel drive, standard with Super Cruise, standard with that 615 horsepower powertrain, and it's at starting price, including destination, of $78,790. It's actually a fair bit cheaper than those competitors I mentioned. Um, it's uh, it's quite a bit more than a rear wheel drive Lyric, almost $19,000 more. But it's $50,000 less than an Escalade IQ, um, and between $2,000 and $20,000 less than a Mercedes, Tesla, or Volvo. So
Hmm.
it's actually not a I mean, compared to the competition, it's looks like a pretty reasonable value.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Compared to everything else that's on the market
yeah.
at this market and this segment.
And let's see. Oh, Mercedes. Let's see. Mercedes and Bentley are launching or Mercedes AMG and Bentley are both launching EVs in 2026. Um, Bentley, it's going to be their first EV, and they're calling it an urban luxury SUV,
Ooh.
which presumably that means that it is a compact or somewhat smaller than a Bentayga.
I went to the Bentley facility in the UK, and it was amazing. Like just like walking into the sewing room, the sewing area, just I felt like there's probably hundreds, but not. But it felt like thousands. Like it was really impressive, and the way they're putting together their EV company or the factory and integrating it with the regular factory, and it's just they're a big luxury brand. They're part of the VW group. Wait, they're still part of the VW group, right?
Yeah.
Everything's confusing nowadays. Um, but just the work they do on their vehicles is just unbelievable. Just everything. Just watching everything they do, the leather, the sewing, the colors, like they'll work with you. People fly out and sit down, and there's a little room where they take you, and they'll go through your car, and they'll make sure you don't create an ugly car. That's another nice thing.
Yeah.
They're like, what about this, and this? They're like, what about if we did this and this and this? Because a lot of like color theory is really it's hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. And sometimes you think, oh, I'll just do this and this and this, but the colors don't work.
Hmm.
They clash. And so having someone there to sort of hold your hand and create like a really great car. So I don't know. After that tour, I was like, wow, it's, it's pretty. It was very very impressive. It was probably one of the most impressive factory tours I've ever done. And the team there really really cares about like not just building their gas cars, but also their upcoming electric vehicles.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what they come up with. Like I said, world's first true luxury urban SUV. Um, Not sure. Like I said, I'll be curious to see what that actually is. Um, if urban, presumably it's smaller, but it'll be their first EV, and they've also decided to um, push back their timeline for going all electric, which was going to be 2030. They've now pushed that back to 2035. But everything in the lineup is going to be electrified. Everything's going to be either a battery electric or a plug-in hybrid, and they're predicting launch of either a PHEV or a BEV every model year or every year until 2035, all developed in house. So
Yeah,
let's
I,
see.
it's. When I was talking to him, like, it makes a lot. The luxury line, the luxury end of like high end luxury, like EVs, makes so much sense for that
Yeah.
because you don't care really about weight. These vehicles are so damn heavy
Hmm.
because there's so many things that they put in them. So weight isn't really a concern. Um, you want something as smooth as possible, which is an EV. You know, you want something that's as quiet, an EV. You want something that just glides, an EV. Like all these things really work to the advantage of these luxury brands. But Bentley is within how many cars they sell a year? Not very many.
It's about,
So
I think they're around 10,000 a year now.
yeah, so
Yeah.
they're not a huge. So going EV takes a little while for a company like this, I think, and it makes sense for them to take a while.
Yeah.
To be honest, they are not a volume automaker, um, but the cars they do make, there's a little bit of love and
Yep. And already they're already selling a bunch of plug-in hybrids. The new Continental GT coupe and convertible, and the Flying Spur are available exclusively with plug-in hybrid powertrains now, and plug-in hybrid is optional on the Bentayga now. And they recently ended production of the W12 that they had been using ever since Volkswagen took over Bentley about 20 years ago.
wow,
Yeah.
you know,
And then Mercedes AMG has released a teaser of the profile of their first standalone high performance SUV, which is going to be a battery electric vehicle. So they're kind of following BMW M with the XM, except they're going all the way. They're not doing a plug-in hybrid like BMW did in the XM, but it's going all electric with the new AMG EA electric platform.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think they you gotta kind of do it. I mean, I think if the automakers have learned anything from Hyundai, is you just have to do it,
Yep.
and you have to do it in a way that people actually want. Um, and I think Ford, I think, is the biggest culprit in this sort of like we're doing no no like these false starts, these stops and starts with this,
Yeah.
and just going nuts with the pricing all over the place for their vehicles. And then, also, again, the F-150 Lightning is the best truck for most people, but the truck market doesn't want an F-150 Lightning, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately. And then last item. Previously, GM had said that they were going to pause production of the Cadillac XT4 at the beginning of 2025 while they retool the plant to enable production of the next generation Chevy Bolt. They've now decided that when they do that pause, it will not restart. They're killing the XT4. So if you really really want a Cadillac XT4, get one in the next few months, because after that they will be gone. And to be honest, not that sad
So,
about it.
yeah, let's
Yeah,
see. We're like Lidcar XT4 sales numbers 15,000 for 2024,
yeah.
22,000 for 2023. So not horrible.
No, but the
Yeah.
the problem with the XT4, is I like the way it looked. I like the design, and it drove really well, but it was especially for a Cadillac, it was quite noisy. Get a lot of road noise transmitted into the cabin, and it just didn't
Oh,
really feel like what you would expect of a Cadillac.
doesn't feel like a Cadillac.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but now they
Oh,
got the optic,
22,000.
and so they don't really need the XT4 anymore.
Oh, well, it was nice knowing you, XT4.
Yep.
Not really, though.
All right. Well, that is all we've got for this time. Unfortunately, Nicole never managed to join the show today,
I-
but
I'm sure the GM people have her doing very important things.
she will be back for the next episode. She promised. So, uh, anything else you wanted to mention?
Um, I don't know. Osaka's really fun. Go to
Yeah,
Osaka.
I haven't been
I
to Osaka.
Neither did I,
Been-
and I tried to stay in one district because I wanted to return with my wife and do more exploring. 'Cause
Hmm.
it's fun to explore with her versus just me by myself wandering around. But I did enjoy myself. There were a lot of tourists, and they do speak a lot. Suzuka, on the other hand, is a fun is an interesting little town. I kept calling it like the Fresno of Japan. Not that it's not a
That sounds
they
vaguely
have
derogatory.
It's not. Fresno's fine. I used to live near Fresno. I used to go to Fresno Zoo as a little kid. They had a Chuck E. Cheese in Fresno. Fresno was great when I was a little kid. I'm sure it's fine now. Um, but it's not Tokyo. It's not Kyoto. It's not. It doesn't have. It. They have the track.
Hmm.
That's all they need. I
Yeah.
think they have the track,
Well,
and they're
if you
like,
got a
we
track
got
like Suzuka, what
you
else
got a
do you
track.
really need?
Yeah. Yeah, they have the track, and the track has like a fun zone, like a little amusement park, and so that was fun. But it doesn't have that sort of call of. And so I went to Osaka the last day I was in Japan, and that's exactly. And Suzuka, because it's not a tourist town.
Hmm.
No one speaks English, which is fine with like Google Translate or
Yeah.
Apple Translate or whatever. And you just have to be you have to be patient, and everyone there is very nice and very patient, and bless them for going for waiting for me to pull up the app and be like, I need this, and pointing at the screen,
Yeah.
or or just pointing at things. I would like to eat this, please, like a child. Um, but Suzuka, if you're going to the race, have Google Translate ready. Also have it ready if you're going to Osaka. But actually, like everyone I talked to had a little bit of English, which is better than me and my actually zero bit of Japanese outside of hello, goodbye, and understanding whether or not they're asking me if I need a bag for my purchase.
All right. Well, I love going to Japan, and hopefully I'll get to go again next year. But in the meantime, we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.